Hello, 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 and welcome to another edition of What a Week right here on MediaNet Live TV with myself, Mr. C, and of course, the historical, fabulous man himself, Tony Crossbody, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, good evening. Good to see you. What's happening, sir?
Everything's good, my brother, and yourself?
Yeah, man, bless, man. We've got a lot of interesting topics to talk about tonight.
Wow, have we got some interesting things for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my gosh. First up, we want to say thank you to all of our viewers, all of our watchers, wherever you are in the UK or wherever you are in the world, for joining us here on What a Week. It's the week where we talk the things about the things that matter with we, to put it politely. So please remember to like, subscribe, and to share. But most importantly, we need you involved in the discussions and the debate. So feel free to join in with your comments, and me and Tony will read them out and make sure that your thoughts, your views are valid just as much as ours. So, Tony, wow, where do we start with this week, sir?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I mean, we're talking about Sainsbury's, aren't we?
Well, let's start from there, please. Sainsbury's did a wonderful thing where
Right.
they released 3 adverts for their Christmas theme ads this year, and I thought each and every single one of them was fabulous in its own right. Each one had its own little story telling about a traditional family journey through the Christmas festive season. However, there was one advert, it seemed to spark a little bit of a debate amongst certain, how can we classify these people? Racists. Oh my gosh. Racist people nearly choked on their pork sausages this week. Oh, mercy. The headline was this. Let's have a look at the headline. Oh.
So that's the first slide.
Yeah.
I think Sainsbury's one, isn't it? Yeah.
Not that one. In the meantime, we'll say good evening to Claire, Angela, Karen, James. Good evening to you all. Here we go. So yeah, so this was Sainsbury's response to the fact that and I want to make this really clear. It wasn't the fact that white people were upset with this advert. It was racists. Let's call them what they are. Let's not generalize a whole race because of the fears or the ignorance and the stupid behavior of a very, very small, minute, mindless set of people called racists. They were saying things such as, Tony, did you hear some of the comments?
Oh, did I wake up in Africa or something?
Oh, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall. It would have given me such joy. Because that's the thing. I can no longer get upset with these people. I have to laugh at them. I honestly have to laugh at them. Can you imagine being in the comfort of your own home and seeing something as minute as a Christmas ad for a supermarket, for you to get so upset that you've got to say, where am I? What's going on? Am I in Africa? That you don't even recognize a black British family in your own. Oh my days, have mercy. What are your thoughts, people? Let us know. Tony, Sainsbury's obviously have defended their advert, and again, any customers threatening to boycott their store for featuring a black family. What was your thoughts? Did you think Sainsbury's did the right thing here? Do you think that they're in danger of losing customers? What was going through your mind? What's your thoughts and opinions on this one, Tony?
Well, I mean, I'm glad that Sainsbury's have sort of stood by, their investment. It just seems to me that when you have what's seen as too many black people in a space, right? So an advert in this case, that for some reason it's upsetting. It's upsetting to the psyche of people who are watching. And you know what, Mr. C? I mean, we've looked at various news items over the last few weeks. Wouldn't it be funny if some of those people were black themselves?
Yeah, listen, anything goes nowadays because that's why I have to say I can't say white people, I have to say racist because racists are popping up in all different shades and colors nowadays. It's so confusing. Oh,
Uh,
Blossom thought it was me in the advert there, the guy with the pink shirt and the purple hat. She said she thought it was me without my glasses. Thank you. His beard game's a little bit stronger than mine. It's just a little bit stronger than mine. uh,
Charmaine says yes. I agree with you, Charmaine. She said that this must be the same person who commented on the black panel of loose women.
I totally agree.
There, did I wake up in Africa or something? So it must be the same.
Yeah, gosh. That's their number one response for everything. Avril says, first time caller watcher. Avril here. How you doing, Avril? Just been watching the previous shows. Excellent. We thank you. We thank you. We try our best here.
My friend Avril. How you doing, Avril?
Oh my goodness, man. So I
wanted to see, you know what, if it was a black family but they were LGBT, do you think that perhaps that would probably be more get that type of response?
Very good question. I think we still would have got this. I think we still would have got the same response from the racists. However, I think what we might have had is a few black people might have complained as well, saying, could we not just show a traditional family? However, you know, there's many different facets to the family nowadays. So I'm sure that all inclusions would be welcome. But yeah, you know, I'm past the stage where I'm going to get angry anymore now. I'm not going to let racists spoil my joy and my fun. Claire also says, don't get angry, just laugh. And Sainsbury's was right, like ITV. Well done, Sainsbury's. Now, can we give Sainsbury's a round of applause? I mean, me personally, I don't shop.
ITV, belated one.
You belated one for ITV as well. Yeah, you know, it's
to make a decision like that and then stick with it. You know, not buckle under the pressure of,
yeah,
you know, probably a minority of people, but they're vociferous enough to make their feelings known. So good on Sainsbury's.
Yeah, I mean, some of the comedians have made some very, very good comments as regards to it. I can't remember which one it was, but one of our comedians said something like, I think it was Tanya Moore, actually. Tanya Moore said the real reason why people were upset with this Sainsbury's Christmas ad is because the black people actually did their gravy properly. Like there was onions in the gravy, there was tomato in the gravy, and this was a step too far for racists. All this extra stuff you're putting in my bisto. It's got onion powder in there already. You don't need to be putting no onions in my bisto. Leave it there.
It is sad though, isn't it? That in a way, I mean, we laugh, but it's kind of sad that after all this time, we've been here so long, made so much of a contribution, that we get to 2020, and it's almost like you've got foreigners on the TV. Do you know what I mean? Like the reaction, like what are these foreigners doing on the TV? They shouldn't be there.
Yeah. Yeah. We let the foreigners work so hard to build up this country. Yeah. They've done their job now. They should be able to relax and rest. We don't want them working anymore on TV. They've done enough, didn't we? Haven't we put them through enough work as it is already? Oh man.
Yeah, there is that element, and you're not wrong with that actually, because you know we came here to help rebuild, didn't we, after the war?
Of course.
And clean and do all the sort of dirty work, and now all of a sudden you want to go on TV? What? Come on,
the audacity. Eh?
You're a bit ambitious, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, Angela Kozia says Tesco cut the black family out, and that is actually our next story, Angela. So let's have a look at that headline, because this was a bit controversial as well. Tesco's being accused of cutting out a black family for their Christmas advert. Can we go to the next slide, please? So here we have a beautiful representation of a black family. There, look at the love that he's giving there on the left hand side. Look at whispering. Hey, you know the way, you know how them dumpling they make me feel. That's absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So this story broke because the young lady who we see in the actual picture here, she went to social media to say that she was in this this new Tesco campaign for their Christmas advert, amongst other different races. However, when she looked at the final edit, she was not there. Her and her screen partner were not there. So it seemed as though Tesco had cut the black couple out of the advert for fear of receiving backlash, or shall we say blacklash, as we should rename it. What was your thoughts on this one, Tony?
Yeah, I wondered whether or not they sort of saw what was happening with Sainsbury's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and sort of didn't have the balls to basically stick by, you know, their guns on this one. And you know, that tends to have that you know, you know, this is why I think we've got to applaud Sainsbury's even more, because there might be people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think in significant numbers, but there might be people who decide I'm going to boycott Sainsbury's on account of that advert, right?
Yeah.
And you know, there may be a few tens, 30, 40 maybe, you know, and Tesco sort of bottles it and says, well, nah, we'll cut it out. I mean, it's kind of weak, really.
Mm.
You had a great idea, and then you bottled it.
Yeah. However, I mean, just giving a little bit of representation from Tesco, their thoughts were that they had already previously used a black woman with a afro style in their last advert. So their reasoning was, I should call it reasoning without any seasoning, was that they didn't want to have another black woman again with an afro in the next ad campaign. And some other people have rallied around Tesco's by saying that, you know, many times for us as creatives or as actors and actresses, that we go for auditions, we go for parts, you know, again, we may end up in a documentary. However, all what's recorded, a lot of that ends up on the editing floor. So, you know, this is just part and parcel of entertainment and film and media and adverts, that not everything which is recorded will end up on screen. So, you know,
I hear that. I hear that. I mean, the issue could have been, if it was the hair, then couldn't they have said, well, can you style it differently, plait it, pull it back in a bun, do something? Why did the hair have to be an issue? Because the last ad we had a woman with her hair all out. Well, then couldn't they just suggest to her, well, do some of your hair, flatten it down, right, in some way? I mean,
to be honest with you, why would she have to do anything with her hair in the first place? Because I've never seen an ad where that somebody, you know, you didn't have two blonde women with their hair just down, or brunette with their hair down. So, you know, it's ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. It's nonsense. Jackie Pearson says, do you think black people only shop in Blue Mountain and Housewife Cash and Carry? Oh, thank you, Jackie. Thank you. And Avril there. Yeah, go on, Tony.
Dark-haired women they had in their ads then.
Exactly. That's exactly what we were just saying.
But you know, Avril, those rules don't apply to us, unfortunately, right? You know, there's this whole thing about how black women wear their hair. It's an issue even in the corporate world, where pretty much you're not even allowed to have your hair up. You know, and I've mentioned this before, how it stands like a crown. People feel intimidated by it and all this sort of thing, and so women have to sort of compromise by either relaxing it or putting on a weave to make it sit down. So that's the historical thing. If what Tesco is saying is true about the hairstyles, then that could probably apply to their feelings about it.
Yeah. So, sorry, can we just remove this little clip here that we've got? Thank you very much. Because I feel like I'm talking around Tony.
a couple of people think. A couple of people think that you were in that advert, but without the glasses. Is that true?
I know it's like, is this going to happen now all the time? Anytime you see a black man with a beard, without glasses, it's Mr. C without glasses. If it's a black man with a beard, it looked like Mr. C, but it wasn't Mr. C. Oh, it's good to be recognized still. Imitation, as they say, is the highest form of flattery. So there you go. We move to further seas, right over to Australia, where there has been a little bit of a ruckus kicked up as the boss of Qantas Airline has made an announcement. Let's have a look at this headline, please. Yeah, so Australia's national carrier Qantas are now thinking about having all international travelers for long distance, that they should all be vaccinated against COVID-19 before flying. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Will other airlines follow suit? What say you people?
It's not like we didn't see this coming. This is going to be part of the new incentive that you know, institutions are going to put in place for you to enjoy the privileges previously enjoyed, and if you don't fall into line, see, what they say is, well, vaccinations are not mandatory, right?
Yeah.
So they're not going to force it on you, but they are going to force it on you indirectly. I saw the interview last night actually with the boss, and they are definitely going to bring that in. He's you know, they were just going to sign that off. That's definitely coming in.
Yeah, I mean, literally, look, his name escapes me. Mr. Joyce, I do believe it is Alan Joyce. There you go, CEO. He says that it's going to be a necessity in order to do this. So, from once he's using such strong words as necessary or necessity, then you know that this is something they're not just planning to do. This is something that they're most likely going to do. Will this affect you in any shape or format, Tony? Will you now be forced into taking the vaccine if you get any, say, international work, or will you still be trying to hold your stance on not being vaccinated?
Well, I mean, you know, people have to make a choice, don't they, as to how much they want to travel as opposed to how much they value their health. I mean, it's going to be a personal call for everyone. I mean, a lot of us do like to travel. We, as you said, we travel for work or we travel for pleasure.
Yes.
But if every airline incorporates this, there's going to be a dilemma for a lot of people. It's either you're going to travel and have the vaccination, or you're not going to travel and not have it. So you know, this is, you know, I think who just mentioned it. Someone said it in the Angela Cozier said it has started. Yes, it has started. And this will probably go right across the board too. You know, from libraries to gyms to if nightclubs come back, they'll have that, right?
Wow.
You're going to have to prove. You know, I think they were talking about having a digital passport that proves that you have your shots. So you won't be able to go into a lot of places that you used to go into if you don't have that vaccination. Yeah.
So imagine that, man. Big dance Saturday night and you can't get in. Worse still, you can't get a dance from a gal unless you show her that you're COVID-19 vaccinated. Gee whiz, what is this world coming to, mate?
Right, and then you got to get the dance. You got to talk to her, right? You got to convince her.
Listen, I mean, I think that this is definitely going to be rolled out, as you said, Tony, across all kind of airlines sooner or later. I mean, some people will argue that, you know, look, we already do this kind of thing. Like if you're going to certain parts of Africa, you've got to have a certain type of vaccination, you know, whether it be hepatitis B and C or malaria jab, or, you know, so, you know, what's the difference? You're just having an extra jab. It's for COVID-19. I don't see what the big problem is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the argument against malaria and typhoid and yellow fever is probably a bit more convincing than the argument for COVID-19. And we, you know, this sort of thing and restriction of people traveling is really just is leverage that's being used to force people to actually have it. And adults don't like that. You know, adults don't want to be treated as children. If you do this, we're going to take this away. I mean, it just makes you more suspicious about what is it that they're really trying to implement here.
Well, I mean, I suppose the other side of it is that when you look at, you know, whether you go to these countries, you know, certain countries where that, you know, you have to have certain, where they ask you to have certain shots or vaccinations, it's not mandatory for you to have them. You could still go to Africa and not have a malaria, you know, certain parts of Africa, I should say, and not have a malaria jab or a hepatitis B or C or whatever letter it is jab. It's your own personal choice. So again, so should this be, again, your own personal choice as regards to having a coronavirus, a COVID-19 vaccination? Should it be the individual's choice, or should the government step in and make this mandatory for all of its citizens? What say you? What say you? Sister Kenya Sue says Qantas ensuring that their recruitment population increases only fit one demographic. Okay. However, I've got to say that there's one company that's fighting back already on this, Tony. Let's have a look at this headline, this next headline. Karen James says, yes, it feels like the choice is being taken away from us.
Absolutely, Karen. Absolutely.
So this is a company called Tradewinds Travel, and they've said they've made a company decision today not to sell any Qantas flights, even on a code share, following their announcements of no vaccination, no flight. There are far superior airlines with flights to Australia. Very, very, very unusual stance there. If we can just remove this. Thank you very much. Tradewinds Travel there have taken that unusual stance to say, well, if that's how you want to operate your business, we won't do any business with you.
Well, that's very encouraging, isn't it?
Listen, I think it's the way forward. I think people need to, if you really feel that, you know, that the choice is being taken away from you and you don't like it, stand up and say something now. And let's not wait until it's too late. Tracy Angel informs us that the Human Rights Act of 1998 covers you for your choice. Well, will they amend that act, or will it still stand? We'll have to find out. Moses also says it should be based on an individual's choice. Thank you very much.
So Anthony Lowe says, will you need to prove that you had the vaccination before you can use any form of public transport? Well, it might get to that. It really might get to that. And I think so far, the British public, for the most part, has been obviously very, very compliant. We're not like those on the European continent, like the French, who, you know, I think it was only a few days ago, were causing hell in France over new proposed laws that suggest that you can't film the police. They went crazy. You also had some of the population of Denmark rioting. We didn't see that on mainstream news over new laws to do with COVID-19, and they had to overturn. They managed to overturn the laws that the government were trying to bring in place. But the British, you know, we're a different type of docile sheep, unfortunately.
Stiff upper lip, you know, chap. We don't complain. We're British. What we'll do, we'll stand in a queue and look at you in the back of your head and mutter amongst ourselves.
Right.
But we shall not complain.
But in fact, in saying that, though, it's the northern people who have the reputation of sort of standing up, and they're probably going to be the first before Southerners do it. And part of the reason is because Southerners tend to be richer. They're far more comfortable. They want to sort of have an easy life. And they don't want to inconvenience themselves by actually going out and being counted. Where the Northerners, who we've seen in places like Liverpool, where, you know, they've been protesting over the lockdown, they're not happy at all. We're now starting to murmur about it. You know, you are starting to hear murmurs. Even in the Daily Mail the other day had a very interesting article about how the COVID figures are fraudulent. So slowly but surely, you know, people's eyes are starting to open. But the question is, what are they going to do?
Yeah, I mean, gee whiz, what are we going to do? And thank you very much. And Angela Cozier points out that the Human Rights Act of 1998 is actually is a EU act and not a UK act. And obviously, from the 1st of the 1st, 2021, things will change for us, being the United Kingdom, because we will no longer be part of the European Union. So, will things be different again for us? Wow, we shall have to watch and see. We shall have to watch and see. But sorry, Denise Richards says the Daily Fail never Mail, Daily Fail.
Once in a while, Denise, the Daily Mail comes up with a good article. It's once every 15 years, but that one was a good one.
Listen, yeah, they special training they have at the Daily Mail. Special training. But listen, I think for myself, it's gonna be there's gonna be some tough decisions that I'm gonna have to make, man. Because there's some beautiful parts of the world which I'd love to travel to for work and for leisure. However, if I feel that I'm being forced to take something which I think is not beneficial to my health, then do I try and take something so that I can explore the world as I should, or do I sit down in this godforsaken country and become a prisoner to these new laws what are going to be coming out? So it's a tough decision, man. Tough decision. Tracy Angel says, as a nurse, midwife, and health visitor, we can't force parents to give their children vaccines, but we can give health promotion, giving informed choice. So they cannot force adults either. I think that may be the how things are right now, Tracy. But I do believe that they're making changes to affect that. So
no, I think they've already updated the law. I can't remember the name of the law now. I think they did it in March, though. I remember specifically seeing it, which said that they can, well, if vaccines become mandatory, that's when they can do it. They actually can,
right,
or take you away to a facility or your children away to basically make sure they have it. So
this is a Coronavirus Act.
Yeah, that's the one. There you go.
Coronavirus Act.
They've already sort of made those amendments. So yes, we have some liberty for now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if the public stay quiet, then they're going to roll over you, and a lot of us we're going to struggle with this.
There's a lot of talk as regards to people now using and quoting common law very much in how to deal with these new statutes and laws that are being passed. What's your thoughts and views on this, Tony? Do you think that people stand a chance to try to claim some old historical law which is connected to the Magna Carta, and that everybody has the right of freedom of movement, of speech, and as long as you don't harm anybody? What's your thoughts and views on this?
I think that the way the government's acting now, with the laws that they've passed, which have gone around Parliament, should tell you what they think about common law. I don't think they have much respect for the institution of government and the way it's been set up. So quoting common law, I don't know the effectiveness. There's a video, and I haven't had a look at it yet, but it supposedly shows some people using common law against the police and being successful. So I'm yet to look at that. But as I said, I mean, if you're being surrounded by police in the dark of night and you try and quote common law, it's going to be, their prerogative as to whether you get beaten around the head with your truncheon.
So make sure you do your research first, people. Otherwise, you could end up in a sticky situation. Myself personally, I've used some quotes from common law in my how can I put it, my adventures with the police over the last 10 to 15 years. And in the beginning, I ended up in handcuffs and in the police station. But to the latter end, I've seen police scratch their heads and literally walk away and leave me to carry on with my lawful free way. So it's one of those areas where you really need to do your research. You really need to look into it. Don't just watch 2 videos and think that you can now start quoting things to the police and get away with stuff. It's not that simple. And if you end up in a court of law trying to quote free man of the land and common law and get it wrong, you will serve either a hefty fine. You will either be served with a hefty fine or do some time. So please make sure you check these things out properly. We'd like to move on to our next story, where we speak of a particular official who was working to compensate victims of the Windrush scandal. And however, she feels that things are not really changing. So she decided to quit. Let's have a look at this headline. Okay, we're having a little bit of problem with the slide. Her name is Alexandra Ankra. She is official. Here we go. Where she's saying the Home Office regulations what are coming out, or the lack of the regulations. She says that it shows a complete lack of humanity from the Home Office, and she's a senior Home Office employee who's quit her job. She's like, she cannot do this any longer.
So she was appointed to basically look into the sort of compensation scheme, and she pointed out that many of the people who were working on this were some of the people who were working on deportation, actually getting some of these people kicked out. And
Wow.
she points out that they show very much a lack of humanity, and apparently 196 people have between them received something like just over £1 million.
Wow.
And
that's pittance, really.
Interestingly, not according to the report anyway, not as many people were as expected have actually applied for the compensation. I don't know why that is.
Well, I mean, come on, let's look at it. I don't know about yourself, Tony, but I know there's many a times when my mother received some kind of official documentation, she would ask me, her son at the time, 14, 13, to sit down with her and read through it and try and explain it to her. So if we're talking about people from that Windrush generation, where now they've been given something, most likely the forms is online. Again, they're probably using language and legalese which they're not familiar with. And again, they may feel that, oh, I don't fully understand what this is saying. And so there's going to be a hesitation to apply, a hesitation to actually fill out a form correctly. And I think this is one of the reasons why the uptake has been so low. Also, again, not forgetting that these people probably have a tremendous amount of fear connected with the Home Office and anything to do with them after the last experiences that they've had.
True. Yeah. But it's really just, this whole thing has been handled so badly. You just wonder if it's just something that's been shelved. Once it's out of the limelight of the news, they can mess it up as much as they want behind the scenes because nobody's really looking. That's yesterday's news, and the fact that these people, you can imagine the sort of paltry sums that they've received. These 196 people, what, £550 and £1,500 for all the suffering that they've had to endure. I mean, it's just. So if she's quit, then that goes to show how bad things are already behind the scenes.
100%, because once you're a senior member of the Home Office, you're on decent amount of money, and to say that for you to quit, that means you actually feel that there's nothing you personally can do to change this environment, this situation. So that, to me, that's like saying, I mean, I could be wrong, it's just my own opinion, that it's either you yourself feel that you cannot affect any change in this environment, or that you do not want to no longer be part of what is happening within this environment, or you've seen so much wrongdoing that your own mental health and physical health now feels that it's going to be affected if you stay within this environment. And those are the first three things which come to my mind why this lady would leave her a senior job like that. I think we have to commend her, number one, for the principle and actually speaking up about it and doing such an honorable thing of actually like leaving your job, quitting your job, to make a stance against it. I think Donald Trump could learn a lot in this situation. And also, Priti Patel could learn a lot about when it's time to leave your job, Priti, to quit.
She's too busy bullying people out of a job, isn't it? So Jackie Pearson says these forms are not straightforward. It looks like a book. Our people are missing out on what they are due. Yes, Jackie. Yeah.
So I mean, is there anything we can do to support our elderly, our wise people within our communities? Should we be doing more to help them?
Yeah. Do we have any sort of advocacy groups that people could go to for this sort of assistance with filling in forms, with information? This is probably the sort of thing we need.
Well, definitely. So let us all check in on our elderly, be it family, be it family friends as well, because sometimes, as we know, a lot of our elderly parents or grandparents have now passed away, but yet their friends are still around. Let's check in on them and then see if if we can give them any kind of support with this Windrush compensation scheme. And again, where we see anything going wrong, let's really try and write and implore our local MPs or the MPs for those particular elderly people or those Windrush generation, that they can get the right kind of help and support that they richly deserve for everything what they've done for us, especially.
So Norm Ferguson points out, where are their children? Well, that's a source of help that these ones can have.
Definitely, definitely.
Children and at least relatives that can help out. I mean, obviously, some of these elderly people are on their own, but for those that aren't, then you would hope that their family would get involved to help them, deal with these forms, the administration.
But again, I state the same thing, that there's a generation who, like probably a first generation of Black British children born here, who have been miseducated, who have left school, and even though they've managed to get a job, that their standard of education is not very great. So again, they see these kind of forms as being very challenging, and also it exposes the level of education or the lack of education that they've had themselves. So some are quite reluctant to do any kind of form of paperwork. They may talk very well, very eloquently. However, putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboards, they're a little bit more reluctant to do so because, again, of the lack of education, or where education has failed them within this country. Denise Francis says maybe their children don't know how to help them, which is echoing what I was saying.
And I hear that. But again, could we not find someone who can, like a friend or an associate? You know what I mean? Just because I can't help my mom or my dad doesn't mean, well, they can't get no help, right? I mean, I must find a friend and say to a brother, listen, I need some help. My mom needs help. I know you're a man that knows how to fill in form. Would you mind helping us out?
I mean, definitely. I think you've hit the right answer there, Tony. Because if we look in some other communities where, there's parts of Tower Hamlets where there's mothers, there's aunties, there's uncles who speak not a word of English. However, that their family will make sure that they get either a translator or somebody who can help them to fill out forms, to do with any kind of social or economical kind of support. So I think we have to start creating that kind of network and framework for our Windrush generation. And again, for those who are in that kind of elderly bracket, be it parents or grandparents, definitely. Robert Quay has a very good point. He says, hi, Avril. The 3 sections of the Magna Carta that are left are based on the Glenville Law from 1187, which the Magna Carta is based on. Thank you very much for sharing that, Robert.
Saying good evening is Donna. Donna Ben has a good point. She says they need to learn, that's talking about relatives and friends, they need to learn to take an interest in those who need help. So the internet is a wonderful, not like in our day when you had to go somewhere to find out things. Yes, Donna.
And Denise actually says as well, even I find myself confused sometimes filling out forms. So yeah, it can be a little bit daunting. It can be a little bit daunting. I know, like from myself, the first time I tried to do my tax returns, I felt pressure. I felt pressure because it was like, oh gosh, then I go find out about the cash me have under the mattress. Oh gosh, I don't want to end up like Lester Piggott.
And you know the worst thing, right? You can't call a Bridget to help you because you don't want them to know how much you're earning.
Come on, you understand?
So you're stuck.
Yeah. But listen, help is out there, people. We just have to ask. We just have to ask.
You gotta get over the embarrassment and the shyness, man. You know, when it
Definitely.
comes to this compensation thing, apparently, you know, I think statistically the government have said that
Excuse me.
some type of claim up to about £200 million. So it's there, you know, it's
Come
there.
on,
And
people.
just gonna get over, you know, whatever it is that we feel. Find someone, you know, who we know, you know, is literate, and ask them for help.
Definitely. Let's give the love and support that they need.
Mm.
Talking about love and support, obviously, Sundays at 9 o'clock has become a time where, for us as Black people, we flock to BBC One to see the next enchanted episode of what's the award-winning producer Steve McQueen has in store for us. 2 Sundays ago, he enthralled and captured a whole community and culture with his masterpiece, which was Mangrove, which told the story of Frank Critchlow and Darcus Howe. And the applause were heard all over the UK for those of us who watched. We were then teased with the title Lovers Rock. And straight away, for some of us, memories came flooding to us. Many a times being forehead to forehead with a stranger in the darkness of some sweaty place, and the music, just made your waist do certain little things with that stranger. And even in your depths of your loneliness, in that moment, through the genre of Lovers Rock, you felt the love, and we rocked. So this Sunday just gone, we all sat, watched, waiting with joy in our hearts for the next installment of Small Axe, and it started off beautifully. We saw speaker boxes being strung up. When you saw that, Tony, what did you feel to see on BBC One, man, them stringing up speaker boxes? What was going through your mind, my brother?
Yeah, it was like, you know, those initial parts felt like, you know, wow, I could be there watching it. You know, it sort of took you back. It took you back, the whole sort of atmosphere. You know, I watched it late. Day, after seeing all the and I will get into it in a second. Anyway, I'll give you my opinion about it, but yeah, they captured certain elements quite well, I thought.
Well, listen, let's talk about, first and foremost, the positives, because there were lots of positives as regards to Lovers Rock. You know, the accurate costume,
right?
You know, the clothing was spot on.
Right.
We saw Gabici jumpers.
Right.
We saw the dresses which the girls were wearing on a Sunday, but also on a Saturday night as well.
Right.
Your church finest. Let's near enough say. We saw Rasta man with tams, not Rasta man. We saw mans with tams and the camel length coats. We saw the style and the nostalgia of that particular time, and it was well reflected. Again, the music, the tunes, what were played. Again, a breath of fresh air to hear such lovely tunes on national television, which represented our past and our culture in such a beautiful way. I don't know. What did people think? What was your thoughts and views? And let's talk about the positives first of all, ladies and gentlemen. The positives. Those of you who watched the program, let's echo your positives that you saw.
Robert Quay, he's talking about is that the first half of Small Axe was great, but then it went downhill.
I think he's talking about Lovers Rock. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Karen says there were positives to Lovers Rock. It started off with such potential.
Good. Denise Francis says, I watched it this evening and okay, it wasn't best, but instead of complaining, we should be glad to see Black people on the television rather than criticize it. Very good opinion.
I never thought in a million years that you would see a program, movie, right, with that as a theme. Never. And this is probably going to be the one and only time you'll ever see that. I think the only other film I've ever seen, which is anything remotely close, that would probably have been Babylon back in the day when it first came out. But I never thought I'd see a show about Lovers Rock, right, about a party in the front room.
Yeah.
So that was really nice to see.
Other comments that I saw which were positive were the fact that he used quite a young cast to play the lead roles. We had the lead male role was played by a young actor by the name of Michael Ward. Most of our viewers will probably, or our viewers' children, will remember him from the groundbreaking film which was released late last year, early this year, called Blue Story, where he played a young inner city guy who's caught up in crime and looking after his younger two brothers. Absolutely fantastic film. So to see somebody from that generation play, you know, almost like one of us, and I think he did a damn good job.
It was convincing. It was convincing. I mean, even some people complained about the accents were fake. And no, they're not, because that's how it was back then. You had some people, you know, trying to sound like they were Jamaican, they didn't. And then you had some that sounded more authentic. I mean, that, you know, I wouldn't, you know, they weren't trying to be Jamaican. They were trying to be English people, English black people in the UK, enjoying their black culture. And as we know, from time immemorial till now, there are many people, we all do it. It's incorporated in the culture. We try to use Jamaican dialect, and it doesn't come off with most of us, right?
Well, yes, I hear your argument, Tony. However, I'm, as I said, I'm gonna stay strong for now, because we're gonna deal with the positives. We're gonna deal with the positives.
Well, that's, you know, for me, I didn't really see that as a negative as many people did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, you know, I've seen that. We experienced that. But okay, we'll hear what you what your feeling is about it. But I like the whole ambience of the party, the way, you
absolutely.
know, you know what? I just think that they probably need a couple of more experienced researchers for that program, because little things that I picked up on, that, you know, you never had people play music on a turntable with a big long spindle, for example, right? Which you know, which is a minor, but it's a major, if you understand.
It's a major.
And yeah, just yeah. Anyway.
So Donna Ben says she loved the hair, the getting ready, and again we saw the paraffin lamp in the middle of the room with the hot iron comb on it. Oh my gosh, that was really, really nostalgic. The food being cooked in the kitchen, again, it looked like authentic Caribbean food. Oh man, I could almost smell it. I wish they had a thing called smell-o-vision, so I could have. Oh man, so again, that was really good. Food and drink on sale, and she says as well, one of the things what I did love, the fact of the little elbow pull, the little
I love that. And they emphasize that, right? I like the way they emphasized it, how different women were being pulled, touching the elbow. Yeah. I liked it. Surprised, you know, after, you know, I watched it, having looked at the saw the negative comments, and I was surprised. I enjoyed it more than I'm going to complain about it.
Okay, which is good. And so look, let's deal with this, because I think it's probably been one of the most talked about programs this week. Some people were absolutely traumatized by it. Absolutely traumatized by it. And I can see both sides of the argument. I think one of the things what I saw was a brief interview by a young black lady on behalf of the British Film Institute, was interviewing Steve McQueen and asking him for, you know, how he came up with the idea and what he wanted to, you know, what was the whole premise behind Lovers Rock. And I'm paraphrasing. He was saying things such as he wanted to show this story, this time, this era that has contributed so much to British culture, which has never been recognized. So again, and I think he, you know, this is where himself being an artistic creative, sometimes in the beauty of displaying something artistically and creatively, which is done very subtle in a way that sometimes we don't hear or feel the real messages that he's trying to convey. So if I'm just going to pick up on a few of those before we look at some of the other comments. So number one, the fact that Black culture has contributed so much to music in this country, for example, and that Lovers Rock was its own unique genre, where, you know, a lot of the time the influences as regards to love music was either from the States, from soul music. Again, it might have been a little bit more hardcore with some of the reggae music, but Lovers Rock was a British thing which had an influence over music in such a big way. Because what happened now, we had the likes of Dennis Brown, Bob Marley, Gregory Isaacs, all of these big reggae artists coming to the UK, coming to London to write music, to record music through this kind of this new vein called Lovers Rock. So that was one thing which he wanted to kind of pick up on. The other thing as well, he didn't actually say it, but I believe this is what he was trying to say as well, is that the fact that Black culture has played such a major part as regards to fashion within this country and throughout the world as well, that, you know, we took our Sunday best from church and we took that into the raving environment.
Upcycled.
We upcycled. We definitely did that. You know, the way how we went to raves with the Gabiches, the Farahs, the pencil skirts, the you know, the shoes that we was getting from Ballet or Panache, or, you know, these stores which had the finest. This is how we was going to our raves, and again, it brought a sense of pride, of fashion and style, which this country wasn't ready for, I'd have to say. And also, again, just the whole entrepreneurship with, you know, the selling of alcohol, the selling of food in a rave or a party just wasn't done before. And most importantly, the fact that we was denied access to clubs and music establishments because of the color of our skin. So we had to do our own thing, and we thrived in that environment. And I think these are some of the things what Steve McQueen wanted to bring to the screen to celebrate that culture of what we had and what we shared with the world. And then there were bits in there that,
yeah, come on, talk up the thing.
Let's so number one, let's start with Silly Games. Let's start with Silly Games. Beautiful to see the song Silly Games being sung, being played in the dance.
Yeah.
The full song, the whole song, the whole 12-inch version was played. It was good to also see the producer of that song, Dennis Bovell, actually featured in the scene as well, which was good to see him getting acknowledgement. Yeah, and royalties and monies as well. However, the song had stopped and the singing continued for what seemed like an eternity. Was what people argued, was that really necessary? People argued again. If that had happened in a dance, would we not have said to the DJ, "Hey DJ, run the next tune"?
I'm laughing at the same time reading Donna Ben's comment. She said that the Silly Games extended LP version. Why?
Oh, and also Donna says as well. No, go back to Donna. She said the rats on the floor. What the hell? Never in my life either, Don. I think never in a lot of our lives. That the dancing, it was some uncontrolled frenzy. I've seen things like this happen in a Pentecostal church once, possibly, but never in a dance. Never in a dance under the genre of Lovers Rock had I seen. And you know, people were saying that there's no way for us as black people would go and put on our good clothes and then go fling with yourself pan floor and cavort in such a way. It just wouldn't happen.
Karen James says your friend would never leave you leave a party without you. Not my friend anyway.
Now listen, Karen, thank you so much for bringing that up. There is again, so what it is that I think, Steve, we love you. You know what you did with 12 Years a Slave was outstanding. What you did with Mangrove was outstanding. However, Steve, we now have to look at you and question certain things about you, which this is what happens in our culture. Even though you're one of us, Steve, we have to question your passage through the blackness. And it's moments like this where if you get it wrong, we have to start asking questions as regards to your black card. Now, we're not disrespecting you as a black man. We just need to know about your experiences, because there's no way any black girl who are friends, bona fide, you and me, is ever gonna leave you in a dance, and it's only you and her who came, and not even say to your friend, number one, the reason why you're leaving the dance, and number two, what exactly was she so vexed that she had to leave the dance for? So it's things like this which makes us think that you're disrespecting the culture in a way. And I think these are some of the things which made us a little bit kind of not angry but disappointed. We have to talk about this, also the amount of ganja smoking in the place. Have you ever been to a Lovers Rock dance and seen so much ganja smoking before, Tony?
No.
So yeah, I mean, again, another.
I think, Steve, I think that they were trying to put everything that you'd see in the blues and in the club.
Oh, okay.
You understand? So although it was a Lovers Rock party, they played roots music, and so some of the scenes in there were like a roots dance, right? Which didn't happen in blues like that. Yeah. You had some of the man them skanking like there was a Jashaka dance.
Now listen, I've been to Jashaka. I've been to all of them, right? But they're not getting on the floor. They're not.
But they're skanking their feet. Yeah. But the point being, you really, if ever, saw that in a blues dance in someone's house. There's just not the space for it, for one, right? So I think that they were trying to. I think that they brought all the elements in that you'd find at raving, whether it's in a venue, in a hall, or in a room, right? As a blues, and I think they kind of just mixed up. Even the guy on the mic, if you listen to him carefully, some of the pattern that he was chatting was 90s pattern, right?
Yeah,
like 90s.
Because he's a young guy. He was a young guy. He was also in Blue Story as well. Yeah.
What I'm saying is that you needed researchers on the spot to say, "Yo, my brother, that wasn't the way we used to chat on the mic. Them time there, we used to say this with this pattern."
Yeah.
For the authenticity, you understand?
Yeah.
But because nobody was on hand to sort of say, this is the way you do it when you introduce a tune, you do it this way, how we used to do it back in the early 80s.
Yeah.
They just went with a flow that, which is pretty modern. And I think that concept sort of existed in the whole party atmosphere. There were certain sort of old and new references that I picked up on anyway.
Jackie Pearson makes a good point. She said that his auntie used to have those kind of parties, and that's where he got it from. I think what it is that I think that his life experience is slightly different to a lot of ours, and hence I don't think he fully understood the connection that we have with the term Lovers Rock and what we expect from the term Lovers Rock and what that genre means to us as people who live through it. who live through the genre of lovers rock and has a love, an unconditional love for that genre of music and what it means. So again, when we saw the scene where I have to pick it up because it was a scene for me which really, this scene for me was the one where I had to say no. We saw the smooth talking gentleman with the tam give the birthday girl her dance because she'd been giving him the eye, the lady in red. He gives her the one dance and then leads her out of the dance. It's her birthday party, by the way. And he takes her to the garden, but keeps walking past where all people are seated, congregated, and keeps walking to the depths of the bottom of the garden.
Right.
And obviously what unfolds is that he's trying to force himself upon her, which the other lead female character comes and saves the day, which was wonderful. However, we then see this guy walk back into the dance and continue in the dance, in this birthday girl's dance, like nothing did Guan.
Right. And that's exactly what Dawn Morgan's saying, that right there. Evening, Dawn. How can you be allowed to be party after trying that? That would never happen. Yeah.
And for me, that showed, and I think this is where people get upset, where when you represent us and our stories culturally, we're not saying that these things didn't happen. However, within our culture, that there's a certain amount of awareness and a certain kind of reaction to these kind of things. And we want people to understand that when you see us, when we see these stories about us, we have to be careful how other cultures and other people think about us, because it made it seem like that was just a normal thing to happen. It wasn't. You know what I mean? That what would have happened in that instance is that somebody would have told somebody else, and men especially would have reacted to that.
Would have come beat him up in the garden.
He would have his head would have got bust in the dance.
Yeah, absolutely.
He would have got ejected from that dance. His head would have got bust. He would have got ejected from that dance. 100%. You could not have come into somebody's house and disrespected the birthday girl like that and got away with it, and just it just wouldn't have happened. So there were certain things which I think other cultures watching would be saying, "Oh, is that how it? Oh, right. So that's how they had their dances back then. You just take a girl in the garden, try to give her one. If it didn't work out, you just went back in and just carried on dancing. Oh, okay. Is that what those dances?"
Yeah, that was certainly negative representation. That was quite disturbing. What did you make of the two girls in the room having a little intimacy there?
Again, for me, it made no sense. It made no sense that a young lady who just had a man near enough tried to force himself upon her. You know, listen, I know nothing about attempted rape or sexual assault or anything like that and what victims feel or go through. However, I'd like to think that if I was a female and a man had tried to force himself upon me, any form of sexual contact immediately after would be not at the top of my head at all. You know, you know, it's like if I'd just nearly been, if I was in, I don't know, a prison and a man nearly tried to, and Beyonce came in my cell afterwards, I don't think I'd be in the mood, Beyonce.
Right.
Is what I'm saying, because of the trauma.
My take on that is, I think that was purposely done. That was an LGBT agenda to, as you have in a lot of these programs now, where and especially to the Black community, and the reason being because the Black community is probably one of the most vociferous against it, and you know, it's part of that sort of programming that we have to get used to it. But I can't recall ever seeing or even witnessing anything close to that. In times that you're talking about early 80s, you know, I mean, why did that need to be introduced into the show? I mean, made absolutely no sense, and just seemed to sort of pander to, you know, an agenda, as I said.
Chris Gatt would like to remind us some of the names of some of the clubs that we used to frequent back then. All Nation, Cubies, Night Moves, Dougies. Is there any others that we've forgotten there, Tony?
All in Hackney.
Bouncing Ball.
Peckham Four Aces.
People's Club down in Edgware Road.
Warwick in Tottenham.
Yes, what was the one on just by Soho in West End. What was that one called? Moonlighting.
Oh, Moonlighting, Gossips.
Gossips. Oh gosh, we said Dougie's. Oh yeah.
A little earlier than that, you probably had 100 Club on Oxford Street.
They're coming through now. Oasis, Palm Trees. Thank you very much, Norms and Karen. Christopher Gatt also said that if a man ever did that kind of stuff in one of the dances, him dead, him dead, him dead, him dead.
Right.
Totally.
Saying good evening to Leaf and Leclerc. Yes, sir. Dennis Bovell. Yeah, he wasn't there. I'm just wondering whether Dennis was actually like he was the advisor. I can't imagine that he was with some of the sort of little faux pas in the show. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you see, the thing is, what we've got to understand with films, again, it comes back down to this the Tesco argument that there is so much hours of footage that is recorded, and that unless you're the actual editor or the director himself, you don't know what's going to be shown and what's not. You see, and you have no control over that. So somebody like Dennis Bovell might have given them some ideas as regards to the songs and the music and various other little bits and pieces. However, the actual storyline and how, again, he met Dennis, the scene that he's involved in is actually inside the actual blues, the dance itself. So a scene where a woman's getting raped, he wouldn't see that. He wouldn't even know that scene's probably there.
No, I know that. I'm talking more so about the authenticity of it, the dance itself.
Right, the dance itself.
I'm sure Dennis would have seen that turntable and said, "Brother, we never use them kind of spindle there. You know what I mean? We had this type of turntable, small spindle, and we used to have dub plate where we used to play, and you know what I mean? Just little things like that. I don't think that they had enough people on the ground to sort of make sure that it was as authentic as possible. Someone there made a point, which I agree with, because I saw it myself, that Steve McQueen was born in 1969. Therefore, he was not there, so he did not witness the scenes firsthand. It's very unlikely.
No, well, this is where
12.
No, but this is where the confusion lies. In fact, that he is of that age and generation to have experienced it. Probably not firsthand, but definitely secondhand, because really and truly, that what we've got to understand is that that genre of lovers rock, really and truly, that emerged in the 70s and the latter end of the 70s. So, of course, Janet Kay was only around about 15 when she voiced that song first time around, 15, around about that kind of age. So, Steve McQueen would have probably have been around about 10 or 8 when that song was probably first charted. So
he was probably around it. I mean, his aunts and his mum or his aunts, whatever, were going out to rave. Maybe they had parties in the house or whatever. But it doesn't explain away the sort of inaccuracies, some of the glaring inaccuracies, right?
Big up Leafon.
It just explained the glaring inaccuracies in some of the things that they portrayed. I mean, they got a lot of things right. They got the atmosphere going, hairstyles, as we said, the outfits and everything was good. But you had that LGBT scene, you had the rape scene, you had the man them playing the music was a bit off.
And let's not forget the hands on the batty scenes.
Right. Well, that's not entirely incorrect, but I think they probably
Tony, let's be honest. Tony, how many dances did you ever go to where in the first dance with a woman, your hand went to her batty? Two things would have happened. Number one, the first thing what would have happened is her hand would have come back and corrected your behavior and put your hand back up. Because no gal, even if she was the dirtiest of the dirtiest gal, is not going to make everybody know that she's the dirtiest of the dirtiest gal in public. Number two, if you was a real bad man now, you wanted to put your hand back down there again, the second thing that woman would have done would have moved your hand back and she would have stopped the dance. She would have stopped dancing with you and look you in your eye. And if you was bad enough to try and do that again, put your in the first dance, the very first dance, put your hand on her batty.
Tracy says that now would I get a box?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Tracy, how about the second dance? Would you be alright with the second dance if your man did that?
It depends.
First time, yeah, a bit cheeky.
It depends. If it was man like you whispering in her ear, Tony.
Some history talk.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll tell you what I was impressed with. What I was impressed with, that they actually reactivated some of the lingo that we used to use back in them time there. Because
yes.
Back then, now you got, if a woman's been with so much man, back then they used to call it Lego beast, right? And so when you hear some of these things, I had to smile to myself. When the girls got the bus at one data, a piece of beef there. That's the sort of language they used to use. So why did they get that so right? And then the party, some of the elements of the party, bit so wrong.
Well, I think
there were parts of it that were right on, and then they didn't carry that research through.
Yeah.
And they know who the target audience would have been, right? Obviously, I think the show played at the New York, at one of the New York festivals, and they all loved it, but they never lived that.
Yeah.
They know that we who lived it would have seen it and scrutinized it, and yet they sort of dropped the ball in certain areas.
Some lovely comments, people. Lovely comments. Christopher Gatt says again that most likely Steve McQueen definitely was not a raver. Jen says, I agree with Mr. C. Steve McQueen would have been around and certainly had at least secondhand experience. I'm a 1968 baby and went to a few parties at 16 and up. It wasn't as authentic as it could have been. I enjoyed the music, however. Denise says no man was touching her flat batty. Karen James says back then people weren't so forward, girls anyway, and Donna Ben says Lego Beast. I had to ask my partner if I did hear right.
I heard that straight. I was like, yo, they got that. And that's the point. That's the problem. I think if they sort of carried on that detail all the way through, that could have been that could have been a. And let's not forget the obvious. What was the plot?
Yes, I mean, yes. I think it almost felt like that. Steve, they give you a pot of money to make these 5 films, and you did them in a different kind of order. And what had happened was the money was running out as he was coming to make the end of the 5th film, or making the 5th film, and that was Lovers Rock. And in order to get a little bit more extra money, you dash in a lesbian scene in there because that gives you automatic another 80 grand funding, and then you kind of like took bits from different other films. So like you took a bit from Babylon, where we had Aswad with Warrior Charge. That was seemed legendary and so accurate. And you tried to do it with this Rastaman chanting and Naya Binge on the floor thing, which didn't work. You then had a scene, Steve, which I don't know, because I think Michael Ward's character was fantastically portrayed. However, I don't think he had the swag to carry this off. So ladies, I'm going to ask you this question. How many of you ladies went to a rave where you saw a man that you liked, he liked you, and this man on the morning of the rave, I'm talking morning, it's broad daylight now, so all of your friends, all of the people who went to this rave could see you, and that man decided he's taking you from the rave on his bicycle? Like your Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Tell me which one of you ever get chirped by a man at a dance and he took you home on his bicycle? Tell me.
Yeah, I agree, Claire. Yeah, I mean, there could have been, and it was easy to make a story out of that, really. Why? Because the main girl, she was a church girl, right? They could have just had the narrative that she was fighting between church and raving, and her mum was a staunch Pentecostal, and she didn't want her to be going out, and she said that bad things happen when you go to the rave, and it could have been a very simple narrative like that. And then she goes to this big rave and she sneaks out, and it was easy to do, but it just seemed like, it was just about, it was what it was basically. It was a celebration of a Lovers Rock blues dance.
It was, and He should have just called it the dance, and we would have been happy with it to a certain degree. We still would have picked up on certain points, but if he just called it the dance, it would have been a better title for it. All the ladies are saying never, not a chance, no sir. But listen, you'd have to be a don to chirp a black woman in a dance, in a rave, and say you want come back for a little talk with me, a little drinks with me. My bicycle just yes sir. There is no way it would happen. No way. Yeah. Jackie Pearson says number 52 bus for shitty. Huh? Oh, you have class, Jackie. You have class.
Boy, Jackie, I had my Ford Capri outside.
Oh, Tony, man, people like you made me sick, man. How am I supposed to Ford Capri, you know?
Yo, I had my fairy dice, the fairy dice and the speakers on the back shelf, man. Little graphic equalizer. We're rolling.
Well, the only thing fairy I had, I shall not say because this is a family program.
But the thing is, see, I mean, there will never be another opportunity to do this again. The funding will not come up again to do this representation. And while there are some glaring errors, I think it's something that you can sort of mark down and say, well, that was covered.
Well, listen.
There are elements about it if you want to reminisce.
I think we've got to say it's a start. That's what we have to say. There's lots of positives in there, and I think what we have to do, we have to learn the lessons from the negative comments. Steve, I hope that you don't take this personal. It's just feedback for you to make whenever you're making a movie or a documentary on our culture. But these are the things that you need to now take into consideration, and not just Steve McQueen. I think anybody who's trying to especially make anything where it deals with a particular love that we have as black people. This is the reason why Jamie Oliver can't do jerk rice. This is the reason why Marco Pierre White can't do rice and peas with chicken, because you use green peas, Marco. That's why we came for you. So within our culture, there's certain things that mean so much to us that you cannot get it wrong. You have to get it right. Such as 12 Years a Slave gym workout.
Yeah. You know what? I think you had a very good point there. I think that, when you're going to get a budget to make these types of shows, I think there has to be a compromise. Like, okay, you're going to try and be as authentic as possible, but the compromise is that you're trying to aim for an international audience, and therefore elements have to go into the story to appeal to them. You see? So
well. Yep, I hear you, Tony, and I definitely do agree. But I think that when you come from our culture, your burden of responsibility to the culture should always be greater than trying to sell something to another culture to make them feel comfortable. I think that preservation of our culture is got to be the utmost, first and foremost, especially when it's something that we love. We're gonna finish up on just one last little bit as regards to the film, and then Tony, we've got to let you do what you do best, man. I know we've gone over time today, ladies and gentlemen, but it's a special one. It's an absolute special one. So if we just ask if you just bear with us a little bit longer, ladies. If it's EastEnders or Hollyoaks is your poison, you can always catch back up on it later on. But we like to finish the show, as we always do, with a little bit of Black history. But the last point what I want to make on the small acts on the Lovers Rock was that, again, at the end of the film, where the young lady climbs back up the drain pipe, gets back into her house, and she climbs into her bed with all of her clothes on. After being out all night in a ganja smoking rave. I think I'll leave it there. I'm not saying that there isn't a girl who did that, but trust me, she's no longer alive, because either her friends beat her or her mother and father beat her, because it just wouldn't happen within our culture. And if it did, it was something which was a very, very small, minute number of people who did that, and it doesn't reflect the whole. We just don't move like that, Steve. We just don't.
I think, Mr. C, overall, I'd rather the show was made than it
Yes,
wasn't.
yeah.
Right?
Because I think that will inspire somebody somewhere to do.
Yeah. Somebody's going to come up and look at that and say, you know what? Yeah, okay, learn from that, and we're going to make a, you know, we're going to build on that.
Yeah.
So
And go on, Tony. Sorry.
No, as a foundation, it was worth watching for that. You would never get to see that anywhere else.
Yeah. And also what that does, it highlights again the fantastic documentary by Melanik Shabazz called The Story of Lovers Rock. And if you really want to see something which reflects the culture, the music, and that time in such a beautifully told way, then please go on. I think it's on Vimeo or Timeo. I can't remember. But if you Google The Story of Lovers Rock, it's a fantastic documentary made by again the same guy who did was it Burning an Illusion? He did, Tony, or was it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Burning an Illusion. The same director, producer who made Burning Illusion. So again, we'll finish on that one before we hand over to Tony to take us into our little Black History Month section. So ladies and gentlemen, please big up man like Tony. All yours, sir.
Yes, sir. Good evening. So we're going to sort of just round up for those of you who are here for the first time. We're going to just cover a little bit of the ground that we touched on last week, and then take it a little bit further. You know, identity for a people is so important.
100%, man.
Identity is the place from which you get your strength. Identity is the place from which you can move forward. Identity is the place from which you can plan for the future. Not having an identity it's like being an orphan, where you're here but you don't know how you got here. You don't know where you're going. You don't know your parents, and you don't know what your ties to this place, planet Earth, that is. You don't know what your ties are. So this sort of Black History segment is a way of sort of introducing you to this idea of identity. You've probably heard a lot of Black history, and you've heard about the accomplishments that we've made all over the world. But we want to talk specifically about those of you who are descendants of enslaved people, right? We want to sort of look at your identity specifically and help you to understand how you got here. Now, last week, we spoke about a little bit of science. We talked about something called craniometry.
Mm-hmm.
Craniometry is the study of skulls. So when scientists or anthropologists find skulls lying in the desert and they dig them up, they measure the skull, which tells them the racial identity of that person who died. Now, for Black people or Negroes, there is a specific classification for Negro skull. And that classification is called dolichocephalic. Okay, that's a new word.
Say it for them again and phonetically so they can pick it up.
Dolichocephalic. Dolichocephalic. So if we could just have the first slide, we'll see the spelling of it here. And just have a little information about that slide number 1. So dolichocephalic, or otherwise known as long-headed. If you look at, maybe Mr. C, could you just read the underlined at the bottom of the page?
Yeah, so dolichocephaly, according to Ritzius, was the distinctive cranial feature of the earliest inhabitants of Europe. Today, it is characteristic of the Negro races.
Thank you.
So again, it goes on to say the Papuans, the Polynesians, and the Australians through. Right. So again, so it's not just Europe, but throughout many different places as well.
Right. So they've dug up many skulls across the European continent. Now, Put that back up, please. They've dug up many skulls around many skeletons around the European continent, and are able to designate these skeletons as dolichocephalic. And dolichocephalic skulls or Negroes have been walking across Europe for thousands of years. We saw, I think it was last week when we saw Cheddar Man. If you recall, Cheddar Man was found in caves in Lancashire, dated about 7000 BC, with the indigenous people of Britain, of the British Isles, of Britain Island. It was a black man. He was a dolichocephalic individual. And consequently, these dolichocephalic individuals were all over Europe. The ancient Saxons were said to be dolichocephalic, as we saw last week.
That's right.
We also saw that tribes called the Goths, the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, these were all dolichocephalic peoples. So the idea that we've been sold that black people only come from Africa is very much a lie.
It's a fib, fabrication, misdirection.
Right. Black people do come from Africa, but they come from everywhere else also. If you were to accept that black people only come from Africa, then the implication of that is to accept then that white people must have come from everywhere else, which is obviously not true based upon the science. So dolichocephalic people were all over Europe. Next slide. And they basically lived everywhere in Europe. Today, though, I want to talk a little bit about Portugal and Spain, because this location is of great interest to you black people, and you're going to see why. Now, in Spain and Portugal were originally ruled by the Romans for a period of time, and then it was invaded by the Visigoths, and then followed by the Muslims, and then it was what were known as the Catholics, right? So this is around 1492. And the main populations of Spain were indigenous Spanish. Some of them were black, but by this time, some of them were white too. We had Muslims and we had Jews. These were the main populations that were living in Spain and in Portugal. Now, what happened is that the Catholic Church was a very powerful force, and still is to this day, right? And they basically were responsible for dictating who were believers and who were infidels. And one of the peoples that the Catholic Church really targeted a lot were the Jews. Now, why was that? Well, it's quite apparent when you look through the pages of history that many people around the world actually knew the history of the Jews, you know, through Moses and all that. They knew those stories and they knew who these people were. And in fact, wherever these people settled, they became very, very influential. So they were involved in the sciences, in the arts, they worked in government, they collected taxes. And this was no different in Spain and in Portugal, okay? In fact, Spain and Portugal collectively is known as the Iberian Peninsula. Now, the Catholic Church did not like the fact that these Jews were very influential, right? They know that they came from far away. They had, you know, they had all this biblical history about them. And people within Spain and Portugal used to call on them to bless things like their crops, to bless their harvest. And this was a real annoyance to the church, because the church saw itself as the only representation of God on earth. So things started to get really bad, that they started to enact laws. Now, bear with me here. Next slide. Next slide. That's slide number 3. Right. So they started to put laws in place to restrict the activity of these Jews that lived in the Iberian Peninsula. So where I've underlined it, notice it says Canon 49. Now, canon is a law, right? Law put out by the church. Canon 49 forbade the blessing of Christian crops by Jews. So if you were a Spanish person or Portuguese person, you were not allowed to call upon a Jew to come and bless your harvest. Now, when you look at that law, what that law tells you is how influential the Jews were and what was really thought about them, and the fact that the Catholics had to suppress them because they did not want them to have that type of spiritual authority. And so what happened is that they were eventually forced to basically convert to Catholicism. This is what was known as the Catholic Inquisition. So many of you would have heard about this in school, the Catholic Inquisition.
Spanish Inquisition, we called it at school.
Right, Spanish Inquisition, right? It's the Spanish Inquisition or the Catholic Inquisition, either way, because it happened in both Spain and Portugal.
Oh, right.
Both Catholic countries, right? So we did that in school, didn't we? But most of that stuff really kind of went in one ear, went in one ear and out the other, right? But this was brought upon, okay? This was brought upon these people. And if we look at the next slide, Mr. C, just to sort of, if you could just read the underlines for that, please, for us.
Okay, so so Isabella I of Castile and Ferdinand II of Aragon ordering the expulsion of all unconverted practicing Jews from the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon. The primary purpose of the expulsion was to eliminate the influence of unconverted Jews on Spain's by then large Jewish origin, New Christian converso population. Good. Wow.
So basically, the Jews, these Jews in Portugal, were forced to convert to Catholicism. Some of them did, some of them didn't, right? But the ones that didn't, they had to drive them out, right? They had to drive them out. So the reason being for that is because they didn't want them to discourage their brothers who were converted to go back to practicing their Jewish religion. So they drove these people out, okay? Now, what did they do with them? Well, when they drove them out, a lot of these people went to this place. Next slide. Next slide, please. This is where they went. That's right. Yep, that's it. This is where they went. They went across the Strait of Gibraltar into Morocco and basically fled down into Africa and particularly the West, right? Where they met in the West existing communities of Hebrews who were already living there for hundreds of years. So they fled from Portugal across the Strait of Gibraltar into Africa, right? So that's interesting. So we have a group of people persecuted across the Strait of Gibraltar into Africa. So why is this important? Next slide. Mr. C, if you could please, with your great eyes.
Africans also settled along parts of the Malabar coast during the 17th and 18th centuries. These were black Jews, descendants of African slaves.
Sorry, can you just read that again? Because I didn't hear that. What did you say?
These were black Jews, descendants of African slaves. Wow.
One more time. I don't think people heard that. One more time.
Africans who settled along parts, these people were black Jews. These Africans, these were black Jews, descendants of African slaves.
Right. So that's taken from a book.
And also, sorry, Tony, I just want to pick out the next bit. They said who had left Cochin and Kerala in southern India,
right,
to come and settle on that coast. So this is letting you know that black Jews also came from southern India.
And if you remember, of course, a few weeks ago, I did show some video footage of some of our brothers who are in India, even to this day. They've been there for 400 years. If you haven't seen that, then you probably have to go back and look at some of the earlier videos. But the point being here is that these people are identified. So these Jews that came from Portugal into Africa and met their brothers were, Mr. C, what were they?
Black Jews.
Black Jews. Notice they were black Jews, descendants of African slaves. So remember, this discussion is about identity, right? It's not about black. There are hundreds of black nations around the world. Not all of them are the same. Black is not one homogenous group of people. Black is split between hundreds of nations. We are talking about one specific nation. Next slide. And that's the book that it's quoted from. It's called The General History of Africa. You can take a screenshot of that if you want. You can find that book on the internet.
So, yeah.
Next slide, please. So, Mr. C, again, please, if you could help me, let's read that paragraph together.
Some historians have noted that the presence of Sephardi, is that correct? Sephardi Jews in Portuguese. Sephardi Jews in Portuguese West Africa by researching records from the Portuguese Inquisition relating to the New World. These show that there was significant Sephardic presence in Angola and Guinea trading posts, and that the Portuguese settlements were crucial.
Thank you. So remember, Sephardi Jews are those Jews that came across the waters from Portugal into Africa. So what color were these people?
Black.
Answers on the postcard, please, right? Next slide.
Sephardi Jews and Mizrahi Jews living primarily in the Maghreb of North Africa, including Morocco, Algeria, Libya, and Tunisia, as well as Sudan and Egypt. Some were established early in the diaspora, others after the expulsion from Iberia in the late 15th century.
Right. So the ones that we're particularly interested in, right, are Sephardi Jews. So when you see Sephardi, you mean Spanish. When you see Spanish, you're talking about Inquisition. When you talk about Inquisition, you're talking about they had to flee. And the nearest place they fled into was into Africa in the West. Right? So these were the black Jews. Let's just throw the map up again, please, so we can have a bit of a detailed look at the map of where they went. Hopefully you've got a big enough screen that you can see this map. Well, this map is from the 18th century, but if you look right in the middle, sort of the middle strip, notice that that land is called
Negro land.
That is how you got your definition as Negroes. See? So many of these people who escaped from Portugal went to these parts and they settled there. Next slide. Another close up here, if we look very close. Okay, this is like where we're looking at sort of Benin, Togo area now. And in the 1700s, if you look at it very carefully, it tells you that this place is called the Kingdom of Judah. Can you see at the top there? Just the top of that, right? So why is a place in Africa called the Kingdom of Judah? Judah was a place in Israel. It is a specific tribe of Israel, and it was called. And then, incidentally, if you go, just cast your eyes down further a little bit. What coast is it?
Slave Coast.
Slave Coast. So you got something associated with Israel in the same area as something associated with the transatlantic slave trade. Next slide. So we saw that. Next slide, please. Next one again. Right, Mr. C. This is about Jamaica now for you, for the Jamaicans that are here.
Okay. Am I just reading the underline bit? Yeah. Okay. So this is to do with ethogenesis. The first Africans to arrive in Jamaica came in 1513 from the Iberian Peninsula.
Right.
Wow.
So in the Caribbean, we've been told that black people came to the Caribbean from Africa. But according to historians, and Jamaican historians know this too, the first enslaved peoples that were brought to Jamaica did not come out of Africa. They came out of the same Portugal that they were forced out of because of not converting. The timeline is exactly the same. But notice how they cleverly say the first Africans. This goes back to what I've always been banging the drum about. You see the first Africans. Whenever they talk about black people, it's always Africa, Africa. They can't really say, because they are vested interests here, they can't really say directly who these people were. So they say African to make you think, oh yeah, well, if they're African, they must have been black. But we previously saw that people escaped out of the Iberian Peninsula. They went into Africa, and some of them ended up in the Caribbean. And not just Jamaica. Next slide.
The Jewish arrival in Barbados is a direct consequence of the Spanish Inquisition.
Thank you. Right? So black people, I'm not gonna try and make things up and lie to you for the sake of lying. This is all verifiable. You can look this up for yourself.
And also, a lot of these people, sorry, Tony, finish what you're saying.
A lot of these people arrived in the Caribbean not directly from Africa.
And also, it's very good, even if you're looking at the continuation in 1492, some Sephardic Jews had fled the persecution in the Liberian Peninsula for Brazil, where they remained until the 17th century. So again, you know, I have to say this because it always surprises me how a lot of black people don't realize that there's more Africans displaced in Brazil than anywhere else in the world. But again, this is saying that again that this is the Sephardic Jews. Right. So not necessarily came from, as you're saying, Tony, Africa per se, but from Portugal and Spain as well. Right. Fantastic, man.
Brazil is a Portuguese colony. It's run by the Portuguese.
Yeah.
So you've got you know, it's a bit like how the British used to take their convicts and criminals and send them to Australia. And
that's hence why Britain's got such a big rule over the country now.
Right. So let me just add some clarification to what we're saying. So you had something called the Catholic Inquisition, right? Those people who lived there, who were forced to convert to Catholicism and refused, ran into Africa. They went across the Strait of Gibraltar. They moved into communities where there were already their fellow brethren who had been there for hundreds of years. So they knew them. So they settled in those areas. Now, the Portuguese had allies in those areas, and they actually chased these Jews into Africa, using their allies as contractors to get them so they could take them on ships. Right? So they chased them because the Portuguese worked for 200 years. They were really the powerhouse, you know, from about the 14th to 16th century. They were really the powerhouse. They were the first European nations to really get slavery rolling. But part of their agenda was the fact that they knew that these people they ran into Africa. They knew where they were. They had alliances with other black nations who were not Jews. They weren't chasing them. And they used to trade with them. But part of the trade also was that they wanted these people to find these individuals and bring them so they could take them to the New World, because they had just established new colonies in Brazil. And so that's what happened. And that's what happened. So you had that, and also the transportation out of Portugal. See? So with that, now you have a situation where you're having people coming out of Africa to the Caribbean. They're coming out of Portugal, and the other Jews that got away, they spread themselves out throughout Europe. They went to Holland, they went to Germany. Some ended up in Britain during that time, but the vast majority of them were taken across the Atlantic and enslaved. Now, what's interesting about these people is that they knew their history, right? They had something called the Torah. Right, the Torah is what we would call basically the Tanakh, which is basically the Old Testament of the Bible. Right? They know they had that was their holy book. Their ancestors wrote that book. Now, it's quite interesting that a little examination of that book reveals something so fascinating, you have to wonder whether or not they actually saw it themselves. Next slide. So in their own Torah, right, this verse taken from the Bible or the Torah itself, actually is there. This is the Torah they had. They knew this. And it actually was a prophecy that they as a people would be taken into bondage with ships, sold, and they would never be rescued. So this is the very holy book that they had. They knew, they learnt it from they were youths. And this is what was written there. Now, how long were they going to be in this situation for? Next slide. They answer it in their own writings. They were going to be forced into slavery and be oppressed for 400 years. So how ironic that you would be suffering something like that, which your ancestors wrote about you. And they took them to the Western Hemisphere. They were spread out throughout the world. They were also taken into India and various other places, the Middle East. A few weeks ago, we saw the, I think it was Turkey that we were looking at, about some of the people that were in Turkey. But 400 years was a designated time that they would be enslaved and oppressed. Now, if you've never heard this before, and this is kind of new to you, I understand. It kind of blew me away when I first heard it. But I've looked it, and just so we can ensure that we're not making things up, I want to sort of look at a little video clip, and let's have someone sort of confirm to us what this is about. Next slide.
Another area in Africa you have something big happening is in Nigeria. You have the Igbo people, or Igbo, pronounced either way. There's 40 million of them. There's been books written about it from scholars in Nigeria, from scholars from the Jewish people. And where it gets interesting is, in America, there was a slave trade. And a lot of the slaves, a very high percentage of them, came from Western Nigerian ports. And in America today, you see a very large movement of African Americans who say that they're the real chosen people, that they're the children of Israel, they're the Judeans. You know, so what are they just trying to create an identity for themselves because they were slaves, or is there really something here? And the answer is, most likely there is something there. And most likely, maybe that they were the original Israelites, and maybe that the Jewish people today, who are white, Caucasian people, came in a little bit later on.
I want to discuss a little bit.
Right. So notice what he says. And this is a rabbi, right? He's also a historian, so he's quite respected. So he points out that, yeah, maybe they were. And then perhaps the white Jewish people, they came in afterwards, right? But that's a story for another time. But the point being that there is so much confirmation about you. The only people who don't know about this is you. So let's just run another quick video confirmation. This is from a South African politician. Some of you will know him. His name is Julius Malema, very influential in South Africa, firebrand, militant brother. But notice what he had to say. Next video.
Another area in Africa you have something big happening is in Nigeria. You have the Igbo people, or Igbo, pronounced either way. There's 40 million of them. There's been books written about it from scholars in Nigeria, from scholars from the Jewish people. And where it gets interesting is, in America, there was a slave trade. And a lot of the slaves, a very high percentage of them, came from Western Nigerian ports. And in America today, you see a very large movement of African Americans who say that they're the real chosen people, that they're the children of Israel, they're the Judeans. You know, so what are they just trying to create an identity for themselves because they were slaves, or is there really something here? And the answer is most likely there is something there. And most likely, maybe that they were the original Israelites. And maybe that the Jewish people today who are white, Caucasian people came in a little bit later on.
I want to discuss a little bit.
We played that again for emphasis. So the next, number 18, please. The next slide. Number 18. That's what we want to hear. So I don't know, people, how you feel about this, but the history is laid out. It's once you follow the dots, you're going to get to understand why you're in this position. Why are you, wherever you find yourselves in the world, you are either oppressed, persecuted. The laws are not helping you. Your young people are not getting work. Disproportionate amount of black men in jail, not doing well through the education system. This is the answer. This has all to do with your history, and without understanding your history, you can't know how to move forward. You can't know how to move forward. You can't move forward from where you are because you don't understand how you got here. Yeah.
Denise Francis says prophecy being fulfilled. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And Lorraine agrees with you. And is this not still going on? So
Correct.
true. So true.
Correct. And so in order to chart a journey, it's not good just to look at where you are and where you're going. That's why a lot of us in our WhatsApp groups and stuff, we're like, yeah, what we need to do is get together, build some schools, some banks and all that. Well, it's not that easy. If you look at the history, you understand why things like Black Wall Street failed, right? Why some of the projects we tried to get off the ground have not been successful. It's your problem, Black people, it's not just the physical things that you're seeing. The root of your problem is actually spiritual.
Okay.
And you're trying to cure a spiritual problem with a physical answer. And you will always fail doing that. You've got to go back to the spiritual root of how you got to be in this position in the first place. Then you can start addressing the problems that we have as a nation. You can't take it from here. We can't even just start at slavery, which has always been pummeled into us. We have to go way before that. Because the big question that has to be asked right now is, okay, so we were in Portugal, we were taking the slaves, but the question is why? Why?
So we have to ask you the big question, Tony. Why?
So hopefully, we're hoping that the producer's got the next slide ready for us. If he hasn't got the video, then at least a slide after that would be nice. We got that slide?
Number 19, number 20.
There you go. So look, in the very Torah, this is the question that we have to ask. If what I'm saying is true, and if this is actually real, then what have we done to deserve this? If the history of these people means that they belong to the Most High, well, why would the Most High treat you like this? Right? So I'm going to leave it here for today, because next week
we're going to ask.
I'm going to tell you what.
Oh, I was just about to say, because you must have want riot to start, Tony.
I'm going to tell you what.
You can't set Black people up like that with a big why, and then what? You don't answer it. So boy, next week, people, leading off from Jeremiah 16:10, we're gonna deal with the big question: why? Oh man, do you think people will be ready for this question, Tony, for the answer?
Well, as Bob Marley says, "I don't business if they're ready. It's coming to them."
So remember, ladies and gentlemen, don't shoot the messenger. Tony, that was absolutely fantastic. I mean, again, some wonderful comments with it from our viewers. Lorraine Rollins says it's good to have knowledge on our history. Angela says yes, it is that whence the Black Irish of Jamaica book. CJH would like to know when the 400 years are up. I'm sure this question will be answered next week. Jen says, thanks for this very informative piece of history. Actually, something my son probably wanted to know about. Again, Lorraine says, we need to understand, acknowledge, and progress, move forward. It's good to. And Christopher Gatt says, love this man, Tony. Preach it, bro. Yeah, also my son and I've been discussing the same thing as what Jen was saying. Thank you for the informative, insightful piece of history. My son and I have been discussing the same thing. So listen, people, what a week it's been. Tony, I just have to say again, man, thank you so much, my brother, for, you know, just taking the time to break that down to us again. You know, from just something as simple as the skulls, again, where they're found, where we've been, our journey, our history, the knowledge, and bringing it back to a spiritual awareness of ourselves, not just as individuals, but also collectively as people, and also making us understand that even though we are all black, we are not all the same type of black. No, Steve McQueen, I wasn't just talking about you. I was just talking in general.
He's your Steve. He's all right.
Steve, you're cool, man. You're cool. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, I know we went a little bit over time, but it was a special one. Next week, we're going in deep. So please, if you can get your children to watch, Tony's going to do a brief recap again of all what he shared with us over the last 2 months. It's so important for our young people, not just our young people, but also the wise amongst us, our elderly generation, the Windrush generation, know this information as well. Because if the youngers and the olders don't know this information, then collectively we don't know enough about ourselves collectively. So it's important that you get your grandparents, your aunties, your uncles, your children, your nephews, your nieces, your godchildren to watch next week's show as well. We want you to continue on with the discussion, the learning, and most importantly, sharing the knowledge. Tony, final words from yourself, sir?
We can't move forward, black people, unless we go back.
So next week on What a Week, we're going back. We're going to take it spiritual, and we're going to be sharing the knowledge with you. Thank you so much for all of you who've been watching and listening. Please make sure that you do like, subscribe, and share. And we'll catch you back same time, same place, Tuesday, 7 p.m. right here on What a Week. He's been Tony Crossbody.
He's been Mr. C.
God bless. Live, love, laugh.
Right.
Tony, boy.
Yes, bro. We're getting there.